Hi and welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Armine Afeyan. I am the CEO of the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative, and this is a special event in the Aurora Dialogues series, which is a series of gatherings that we've done over the years to bring together hearts and minds, people of different backgrounds, walks of life, to talk about things that really matter, and today's going to be no exception. I want to start in perhaps an unusual way, which is to say, I am not feeling particularly well, and I don't know that I necessarily wanted to be here. But I get to be here. And a lot of people that I was talking to before coming up here have shared similar feelings. Wherever you stand on the political spectrum, it's been a turbulent time to be living in this country, to be living in this world. And a lot of that has come to head in the last few days, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that right off the bat. Since 2015, the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative has been identifying and supporting grassroots humanitarian leaders, amplifying their stories and their impact. It's an honor to be opening today's event, Prize Philanthropy, Elevating Impact and Celebrating Unsung Heroes, which we are lucky enough to be hosting with the network of engaged international donors and Myriad. Our three organizations all strive to both elevate the discourse on global humanitarian needs and to elevate the humans on the front lines of local crises around the world. The helpers who've often faced tremendous obstacles to save lives and ensure the security of others. Prize Philanthropy is one way of honoring that remarkable set of people, raising awareness for the challenges they face and growing their capacity to do good in the world. At Aurora, our model of prize philanthropy is rooted in the concept of gratitude in action. Multiple studies and publications have documented that those who have suffered from or witnessed tragedy are actually more likely to assist others. I don't think that's going to come as a surprise to most people in this room. Aurora's founders wanted to show gratitude for those who saved the lives of their ancestors, mine included. I said my name's Armine, it's not exactly a secret, I'm Armenian. During the Armenian genocide. Tough to get a laugh and then say genocide right after. Just the hazard of this role. The establishment of the Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity is that gratitude in action. Our philanthropic work and the grassroots humanitarian grants we provide through the Aurora Prize apply that gratitude directly to the local helpers, addressing pressing needs in the face of crisis and danger, so that they have the resources and tools to transform and save lives. By design, this creates a positive ripple effect of gratitude in action. A portion of the $1 million Aurora Prize each cycle goes to the laureate to fund and support their own work, while the majority of the prize is designated by the laureate to other grassroots humanitarians. That expands the cycle of giving and growing the circle of gratitude. Sadly, the need for gratitude in action for Aurora continues to grow. This is an organization, like many who are represented in this room, that exists to make itself redundant, and we have failed woefully at that mandate. The dangers to humanitarians grow in turn. Last year, the deadliest on record for humanitarians, with over 280 losing their lives in service on the front lines, and this year is shaping up to be even worse. Amidst the darkness and despair, humanitarian luminaries shine a light of hope. You will hear from panelists today who contribute to that light, and we are so fortunate to have this group here. From those in the philanthropic community, with conflicts to disaster-stricken zones, these individuals embody the very best of humanity. They give hope where hope is scarce, they offer relief in moments of crisis, and they often risk their own safety to protect the lives of others. And I can't think of people more deserving of our accolades. Once more, we all get to be here, and I thank you for all making that choice. Our moderator is Aurora board member Raffi Gregorian, and he's going to guide us through an engaging and thought-provoking discussion, and I hope it will inspire you all to put your own gratitude into action to uplift grassroots humanitarians worldwide. We are grateful to be joined by our partners at NEID and Myriad, and by leading figures from the philanthropic and humanitarian sectors. I really hope that everyone gets to mix and mingle, because I think there will be a lot of exciting conversations had this afternoon. I'd like to take a moment to share a brief video about the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative, after which you'll hear from Karen Ansara, board chair of NEID, and Kady Sylla, director of Africa Myriad USA. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being a part of our Aurora community and this important conversation. Thank you.
The Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity is the flagship program of the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative that seeks to address humanitarian challenges around the world. The prize is a global humanitarian award that recognizes and supports individuals who put themselves at risk to save the lives, health, or freedom of those suffering as a result of violent conflict and major human rights violations. Each Aurora Prize laureate is given $1 million and an opportunity to continue the cycle of giving by allocating the majority of their prize money to help the most destitute. This approach helps the initiative create a ripple effect that has impacted the lives of over 3.2 million individuals across 56 countries and territories, facing war, displacement, conflict, persecution, and other humanitarian issues. Aurora exemplifies the concept of gratitude in action, celebrating the power of the human spirit that compels one to act in the face of adversity for the benefit of others.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here for an inspirational occasion, which I think we all desperately need. When this event was being planned a couple months ago, I bet no one would have imagined what we have been through in the last 48 hours. But it seems to me that being here together is really opportune this week, because we're here to recommit ourselves to the welfare of all people in this country, all people around the world. We're here to recommit ourselves to be defenders of democracy and defenders of human rights and true humanitarians at a moment when the world needs to hear our voices the most. The Aurora Humanitarian Initiative and Myriad and NEID all have the mission of amplifying support for humanitarians all over the world. Humanitarians are those who make it their job to be conscious of the plight of others and who feel responsible for others who are suffering, even people they don't know, just based on need. Everyone in this room here is a humanitarian because we feel responsible for supporting everyday humanitarians and often unsung heroes like surgeons who are working in the midst of war, or community health workers who are carrying life-saving vaccines to the last mile, or teachers who are teaching girls clandestinely in basements in Afghanistan, or human rights defenders who are protecting the right to voice and dissent, or everyday humanitarians like the citizens who are pulling their neighbors out of the rubble, or everyday humanitarians like aid workers who are delivering food kits to people who are on the verge of starvation. Think of all the humanitarians you support. I bet it's an impressive group, just by virtue of who you are in this room. That makes you an everyday humanitarian. But our support for those humanitarians can only go so far, can only go the distance, cannot go the distance if we give ever so quietly. But rather, by building collective support, we can invite others to join this drumbeat of gratitude and action that Armine talked about. That's the mantra of the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative. We can build that collective support for humanitarian heroes. But why do we need prizes to honor a few humanitarians? I believe we all need heroes, no matter what society or culture we live in. We need to elevate heroes. And we got that concept from the ancient Greeks, who described a hero as a mortal who had done something that was believed to be humanly impossible and who left a lasting impression on others. Hero, think Hercules, hero. Well, today, our modern day heroes are those who define our greatest ideals, and ideals like courage and honor and justice. Heroes are those who carry forth a torch into the darkness. When we don't have noble heroes, noble humanitarians to elevate, we often gravitate to anti-heroes. And anti-heroes are those who lack positive moral and heroic qualities, but perform actions that some people think lead to good outcomes. Haven't we seen that this week? The cult of the anti-hero. Anti-heroes draw us down to our basest inclinations of mistrust and fear of the other. So rather than venerating anti-heroes, we need to celebrate heroes who raise our aspirations about who we can be and what we can do together to build a kinder world. How can we amplify this drumbeat of gratitude and action for our world's true humanitarian heroes, people like the Aurora Prize laureates, like Dr. Tom Katena, who I had the privilege of meeting a number of years ago, the only doctor in Sudan's Nubian mountains who's been healing in the midst of a never-ending war. Or the Aurora Prize laureate, Dr. Denis Mukwege, who's been serving in the Democratic Republic of the Congo for 20 years, repairing women raped by soldiers. Or the hero who was honored this spring, a nominee, Nasrin Sotoudeh of Iran, who's been repeatedly imprisoned for standing up for dissenters and activists and women who refuse to wear the hijab. The best way I know how to elevate today's humanitarian heroes is through the power of community. Communities like the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative that has gathered for a number of years in Armenia and this spring in LA for a glamorous and glorious tribute to the Aurora Prize winners, past and present. And then there's the community that Myriad has built, a community of donors and foundations who are all supporting grassroots, everyday heroes in Africa and who are honoring the organization Her Tanzania tonight with the King Baudouin Africa Prize. And then there's the community of NEID Global, a network of engaged international donors, where our members are joining giving circles and learning circles and a robust social network to learn from each other how to make a difference and how to elevate the world's unsung heroes. When our communities shine a light on these humanitarian heroes through highly public prizes, we help our friends, our neighbors, our family members find light in the darkness. As Amanda Gorman, poet laureate, read at a presidential inauguration nearly 4 years ago, when day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, and if only we are brave enough to be it. So as we learn about the tremendous humanitarians supported by Aurora today, let us remember that we, too, are the torchbearers if we are brave enough to see the light and brave enough to be it. Thank you.
I think I'm tall enough. Okay. Hi, everyone. I don't know how to follow that up, so lower your expectations. I'm Kady Sylla. I am a director for Myriad USA. at Myriad USA, I should say, for Africa. And for those of you who don't know Myriad USA, we are an intermediary that works with US donors that are interested in supporting social initiatives around the world, but are not interested in having their own family foundations to do so. So we work mostly with individual donors that are passionate about social justice, equity issues outside of the US, and serve as an intermediary for them. Similarly, we also work with incredible social entrepreneurs across the world. I oversee the Africa portfolio. I am African, so I have the double privilege of working in philanthropy and also working with my people to see innovations taking place every single day by leaders like Lydia Charles Moyo, who we'll hear from in a minute. So that's Myriad. There's a lot happening in the world. So give me a minute to put on my hats on, one as a woman, two as an African. The past few days have been hard, depressing, sad. I don't know about you, but every day I've been waking up feeling like there's lead inside of me and I can't get rid of. But then I remember that I grew up as a refugee and I'm like, girl, get your stuff together. This is nothing. I say that because leaders like Lydia and Celina, forgive me, I have to look at your name to make sure I say it. Thank you for giving us hope. You make things possible when everything looks difficult, almost unsurmountable. You roll up your sleeves and then do it. Just make things possible. For Lydia, this started when she was in high school from Tanzania, raised by a single mom who didn't have the means to send her to a great school. And so she ended up in a public school, which is school only in name, where you're sent to essentially fail. And she refused. As a young girl, she said, no, I would not be defined by poverty. I would not be defined by my circumstances. Not only that, I refused to let other girls and women be defined by their circumstances in Tanzania, where most of the girls are not able to continue their education, mostly because of poverty, but also because of cultural norms. So we salute you, Lydia. We salute you, Celina. We salute the Aurora Prize. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Armine, that the world has not made you redundant. I really am. That was very sad. But thank you, and thank you all for being here. We appreciate you. We can do this. Like I said, I was raised as a refugee. I have seen many, many things, and we shall overcome this. So thank you all.
I'd say good afternoon, but it's starting to look very dark outside. But anyway, good afternoon. And thank you to Armine and Karen and Kady. Those are really moving speeches, and I have to say, given the mood of the country and the world right now, it was really a tonic for my ears. So thank you very much. And before I get started, I do want to mention one thing, which is, I think of all the prizes that may be discussed during this panel, or that you're aware of, I think Aurora is the only one that has its own theme song, which is Aloe Black's Shine, which was premiered earlier this year in Los Angeles. Anyway, welcome, and thank you all for coming here, because it's really good to be with fellow humanitarians, and particularly this week. My name is Raffi Gregorian. My life's work has been involved in international peace and security and justice, but humanitarian in the sense of I spent my life working on people or going after people who violate international humanitarian law, which in the US military is called the law of armed conflict. And I was so happy to, after finally stepping down from my government position, to be able to take a position on the board of directors of Aurora in order to honor the humanitarians that operate in the circumstances where those people that I used to go after are creating mayhem and horror. As you just saw in the video earlier, the initiative's marquee effort is, of course, the Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity. Originally envisioned to be awarded only 8 times, it is now starting its 10th year in the second decade, having already funded, as you saw earlier, 430 humanitarian projects in 56 countries. It is one of a handful of such prizes that do more than just recognize the work of the recipient. It also helps the recipients amplify their own work and that of others through grants to grassroots endeavors that, like a stone dropped in a still pond, allow the humanitarian ideal to ripple outward. Our 3 panelists are perfectly suited to help us explore the issue of prize philanthropy and how it can be used to elevate impact. The first is Dame Louise Richardson, now the president of Carnegie Corporation, also the first woman to head the Carnegie Corporation of New York. She started there in 2023 after 7 years as the head of Oxford University, after 6 years as vice chancellor of the University of St. Andrews, having previously been the dean and taught at Harvard, from where she received her MA and her PhD. Besides being a renowned academic leader and distinguished expert on international terrorism and foreign policy, which I can attest to, share that area of work, Dame Richardson has championed efforts to expand socioeconomic and ethnic diversity and defend free speech. What I also only just learned today is that you were in 2020 negotiating a landmark partnership with AstraZeneca to develop, manufacture, and distribute the Oxford COVID-19 vaccine at cost to nations around the world. Thank you. She has received numerous awards for her work as a member of several learned societies and as a trustee on several nonprofit boards. But most importantly, for this event, she also serves on the selection committee for the Aurora Prize. To her left is Celina de Sola. She's the president and co-founder of Glasswing International, which addresses the root causes and consequences of poverty, violence through education, mental health, and youth empowerment initiatives, which since 2007 has directed more than $220 million towards health and education programs and impacted the lives of more than 6 million people in 12 countries. She has over 25 years of experience in international development and social impact. But prior to Glasswing, Celina worked as a consultant and staff for international organizations on gender programs, as an interventionist for Latino immigrants in the US, and led humanitarian responses in countries like Liberia, Chad, Afghanistan, and Iraq. She's a fellow of the Obama Foundation, Ashoka and Lego Reimagined Learning, as well as being an awardee of Skoll, the Audacious Project, Talberg Global Leader, and Schwab Social Entrepreneur. She has a master's degree in social work and public health from my alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania, and that other Ivy League school called, I think it's called Harvard. Also on the advisory council of the Inter-American Foundation and serves on several other nonprofit boards. But in addition to your own experience with prizes, you've also been on the Aurora Expert panel, so that will be very useful for today's discussion too. And then last but not least on the end is Lydia Charles Moyo, who you already heard about a moment ago. She's the founder and executive director of Her Initiative, a young woman-led nonprofit in Tanzania committed to breaking the cycle of poverty by fostering financial resilience for already more than 15,000 women and girls. Being one of only 3 girls in her class of 200 to make it to high school, she started running campaigns to talk to her peers about girls' rights, confidence, and agency by having businesswomen and women musicians and writers share their stories with her classmates. She created the Panda digital website as a training and marketing resource for budding entrepreneurs. I know this because apparently Google translates Swahili, so I was able to look at your website earlier. But also as a digital platform to help young women seek legal, social, or emotional aid for dealing with gender-based violence that can also be accessed by mobile phones through AI-powered SMS. A graduate of the University of Dar es Salaam, Ms. Moyo worked in public relations and as a TV and radio presenter before launching her initiative. She's been an Acumen and Mandela Washington Fellow, was a recipient of the 2023 Global Citizen Prize, and as we just heard earlier today, is this year's winner of the King Baldwin Foundation Africa Prize. So the topic is, like a game show, this is going to be prize philanthropy. Let's get started with a basic question about what is the point of prize philanthropy. Karen, you discussed this a little bit earlier and kind of stole our thunder, but does it elevate the work being done in the field? When you think of successful examples of initiatives and efforts, what comes to mind? So we'll start on this round with you, Louise, and then we'll work our way down.
Well, good afternoon. Oops.
There you go.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I do think prizes elevate the work being celebrated. I think people respond to stories, to narratives, to individuals that they can relate to. So I do think having a prize humanizes the issue. One of the many nonprofit boards I sit on is the Booker Prize Foundation, and there we can actually measure the impact of the Booker Prize. You measure it in book sales, and you measure it in the transformation of the career of the author who receives the prize. I think prizes can also foster innovation. There's a long history of this. In 1714, the British Parliament created the Longitude Prize, and that prompted a clockmaker called John Harrison to develop a chronometer which solved the problem of measuring longitude at sea, which proved to be enormously important. But I think prizes also, they draw attention, they broaden awareness. The French have this lovely expression, pour encourager les autres, to encourage the others. And at Carnegie, we have the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy that we give to philanthropists every couple of years. And again, that's to draw attention to people who are extraordinarily generous, but also to encourage other people to be as generous. I think the mere fact that we can all bring so many prizes to mind, whether it's Nobel, Pulitzer, MacArthur Genius Award, you name it, suggests that prizes really do have an impact. So I think they're very worthwhile, and I'm absolutely thrilled, but more than anything else, profoundly humbled to be part of the Aurora Prize, because I can tell you there is nothing more humbling than reading through the biographies of these finalists. They are the most extraordinary people, and the very idea that one has to select one of them when each and every one of them are such extraordinary individuals that you feel privileged even to write about them, or read about them, I should say. Thank you.
I agree. I think it's, I've had the privilege of reading so many too, and it is really humbling. I will echo what you said about innovation. I think it does. Prizes enable you to do things in the organization that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do because perhaps funding is restricted to a project or to something very specific. I love the kind of the vision of this prize that I haven't seen others like this, where, and you explained it in the beginning, Raffi, where you're given a prize to then support other organizations and other colleagues. And I think already it's so hard to really acknowledge and recognize so many heroes doing incredible work. And the fact that this prize is a prize so you can support other organizations that you admire, that you've learned from, that you continue to learn from, and help elevate other people as well, I think is amazing and really unique. Because sometimes some people receive one prize and then another and then another, and this is different. This really elevates in a way that is about collaboration, solidarity, and elevating the collective, which I think is amazing.
I'm not very far from what they have shared. I totally agree on the innovation part. But for me, I think prizes are important. One, because they make people who are not seen be seen. They're not looking at all the complications of ticking out the boxes like everyone else, but are really looking out on people who are actually creating change in the community. And that promotes authenticity, because we live in a world where we have to do what everyone else is doing. And what I've seen, what Aurora and other prizes do is actually looking at that story and the authenticity of a person doing that. And that's really need to be applauded. But also I think prizes are actually answering the cry of so many people, especially women and youth. Why do I say that? As a young person, I understand the cry has been Where are the resources? Everybody's training, everybody's mentoring, but the prizes are actually having the intentionality to actually resource, to invest in people who are making change in the grassroots. And that's really unique. You don't find that anywhere else. But the other thing is how these prizes are actually strengthening movement. One thing that I would say, nobody in here can do a miracle on their own. We can only do great things together. So really, I applaud what Aurora is doing. One person wins, but many wins as well.
Thank you. I mean, I was struck by your description of the human aspect of this, and also, Louise, what you said is not just about the prizes make these activities of these now sung heroes relatable, but also we're social animals. We like to hear stories about other people, right? That's what inspires us. It's not just data. It is important to measure effect, but to hear what other people do and to be inspired by it. So now we have a sense of prize philanthropy's purpose, but what do we know so far in terms of your own experience about what works and what doesn't work, or what could work better? This is particularly important for us at the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative because we're getting ready to start our second decade. And as I mentioned earlier, the prize is only intended to be for 8 years. So we are kind of restructuring things and looking to the future. So any thoughts you have to share about what works and what doesn't work would be really grateful. Let's start with Celina.
I think that I think one of the challenges, I do think Aurora has done a great job of this, but one of the challenges of prizes is what I alluded to a little bit earlier, like how do you pull outside of individuals that have already been recognized in other spaces and really see, like you said earlier, like really identify and see people that are in different parts of the world and doing this work. And many times as individuals alone, because you also see an individual doing this, and it's humbling but also inspiring. And when you read these stories, you want to do more. You're like, it makes you think about what you can do. And the other thing is that I think is a challenge and an opportunity is how do we then connect a lot of these people to support each other, and particularly someone who may be working alone, for the surgeon you mentioned earlier that's working in Sudan. So how do we connect people to more resources, whether they're financial or just support, or even just support generally? I think that that's really important in such a crisis of leadership and these amazing people that are leading in countries and communities. I think that connecting the awardees and the laureates, I think, is really important, and perhaps we try, but it's really difficult to do it. I think if we could do that a little bit more, it would help the collective.
I agree, and that's really right. One of the best practices is to invest in the movement, and this is really unique, Aurora. Like most of the prizes, just one person. So this intention to actually grow a movement, it's going to replicate the impact bigger. But another thing that I think it's really good for prizes is to continue looking for people who are really making change in the grassroots. That's really important because most of the resources, there's usually a middleman, somewhere. So this direct investment to grassroots leaders is a really good one because you're really giving money to the people that are worth it. But my only suggestion around what could be improved is we should look around prizes not being a one-time thing. It's like you're meeting this person, you're giving them $1 million, and then you leave them, or you're giving them $500. How do we actually continue building their visibility? How do we actually continue connecting them to other people who can resource or support them in many other ways, even if it's not just the prize money, but in terms of connections, in terms of learning and expertise? That will ensure sustainability, and maybe that's something to explore, to just not being a one-time thing.
Well, again, we're in real agreement here. It's wonderful, finally, in this country to be sitting around a number of people with him. Everybody's in agreement. What works? I think one of the challenges is the space is becoming very crowded. There is a proliferation of prizes, and like as has been said, I do think the Aurora Prize is unique, both in the caliber of the people honoured, but also in this idea that it isn't just honouring one person, but they actually give most of the prize away to others whose work they admire, and that is truly admirable. I think the prizes have to be authentic. I think whenever a prize is given, anybody who reads about it must say, oh, yes, and what an admirable person. So I think the quality of the people ends up redounding on the prize itself, so it becomes a virtuous circle. But I think it absolutely has to be authentic. And, you know, to introduce a discordant note, to have a large number of billionaires flying in private jets to award a climate change prize isn't, in my view, awfully authentic. And I think it's really important that that we remain true to the values that inspire the prize, if they are to serve their purpose of elevating what it is we're trying to honor.
Great, thank you, Louise. Thinking of Greta Thunberg taking the boat over here to New York a couple of years ago for the climate change conference. So connectivity, helping amplify grassroots work, and then also the idea of multi-year programming. And that is actually something that Aurora is adopting, which is to let the grants play out over the course of a couple of years, the ones that the recipients determine for the other organizations. So that helps sustain the effort. And also reframes things in terms of thinking about how to support a grassroots organization that may not be able to absorb a lot of money in one fell swoop as well. The last question is with respect to today's multiplicity of world crises and challenges. So how can we envision the future of the philanthropic sector? You mentioned earlier, Louise, just a moment ago, about the crowding of the space. Is there some way we can not only safely support and honor these unsung heroes, but also harness their example to inspire others to step up in ways big and small? Do you have any final thoughts on that?
I think the way forward is also to actually create more of these prizes because it's very competitive. I believe you get hundreds of applications of really quality candidates and you're struggling to find winners. So maybe we need more people with the intention of actually supporting so that everyone who's worth this prize, they get it, you know. But another thing that I think is really important for the prize is to be intentional in terms of sectorial. Because now I know there are many issues affecting the world, but there are issues that are really critical. So having all the prizes, you know, seeing all the issues could be difficult, but maybe we need to have a special eye on education, on women and girls, on technology, on war and peace, you know, so that we are able to actually tackle all the issues that are needed. And lastly is to actually bring everybody together, you know, and see the work that is being done. To be honest, if you asked me last year, I'll tell you I would never think I'll be sitting here. Because how will I be able to travel to the United States and sit with all these important people in the room? It's entirely impossible for most girls or youth or women in the grassroots. But because it is happening, so how do we make sure the ones that cannot access us, we access them? Because literally, us accessing all of you is difficult, but how intentional are we to actually make sure the word is getting out there? Because most of the prizes also are depending on referral. So if I've not been to all the global spaces and meetings, who knows me? Who's going to recommend me? So at the end of the day, maybe we'll get the same people getting prizes. But if we start now getting intentional, where do we find these people that are not seen? We will be sitting here with girls, women, youth, and great people who are doing incredible work in the society. And I think that's important. Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I was thinking about one of the unintended consequences of COVID, well, there's no intended consequences. One of the consequences of COVID, at least for my work at the UN, was being able to use video teleconferencing. And I used to run these civil society roundtables, which this allowed us to reach a much more diverse and more grassroots organizations, although limited, of course, by access to the internet and so on. But just open whole new avenues for us for doing that. One of the things I think that I like about the Aurora Prize is also, unlike the Nobel Prize Committee, which sends out nominations to 3,000 people, these are open to everyone. Anyone can nominate anyone. Doesn't mean you'll win, of course, but it allows access to those people that we want to elevate, which are the unsung heroes. But I know that, Louise, you mentioned earlier when we were speaking that you just came from a meeting of other philanthropists about what's going on in the sector now, so we'd certainly be interested in your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Raffi. Well, yes, I've spent the last several hours at a meeting of presidents of foundations to discuss how do we collaborate and respond to the events of the past few days, which are a cause of considerable concern because, of course, we have many grantees who are on the front line of helping particularly migrants, but a whole raft of other people in this country that we're quite worried about. I do think this is a challenging time for philanthropy in this country particularly. I think people on the right are concerned that philanthropy just supports left-wing causes, and people on the left say philanthropy is just a way for rich people to hide their money. And I think there's an element of truth in both those charges, and I think we have to be reflective and introspective about the criticisms leveled at us. And I think the best defense against them is just to be true to our values and true to finding the people out there who are helping others and enable them to do more of their work. Ultimately, I think that philanthropy is changing. I would say the philanthropic sector in this country is the envy of the world. It's facilitated by the tax system, but even aside from that, the generosity of Americans really is unrivaled. So I think those of us who are interested in encouraging more people to be philanthropic so we can have more prizes, we can fund more people with, say, the Aurora Prize, is to point. You mentioned, Alfred Nobel. Well, this was a chemist who developed dynamite, but we remember him, or we think of him now as funding this great peace prize, or the Pulitzer Prize is such an honor for any journalist, and this is from a man who made his fortune on yellow journalism. So it is a good way to launder one's reputation. But there are other new entrants to the field of philanthropy who are upending it, and I'm thinking here of somebody like Mackenzie Scott, who's giving grants in an entirely different way, just really unsolicited large grants to do with as the grantee chooses. So I think we're seeing something of a democratization of philanthropy with more influence given to the grantees, a greater role in grantees in making decisions. And I think that of course, is healthy. So I do think philanthropy and my peers are exceedingly nervous at the moment, but over the medium to longer term, I think we have a very bright future. But I just think we need to encourage more people to do what the man who founded my foundation, Andrew Carnegie, did. I mean, he resolved to give away all his money by the time he died. He wrote a book called The Gospel of Wealth, in which he argued that the man who dies rich dies disgraced. And I have given a present of this book to quite a number of people. It's made them very uncomfortable. But it's a wonderful philosophy which is as relevant today because when you see the impact of these prizes and the fact that we now know about these extraordinary recipients of the Aurora Prize and that they in turn are able to spread the prize to the people they admire, we just need, as you say, to do much more of it so that we have more extraordinary people like you sitting here in the future.
Celina?
Following the two of you is tough, obviously, and I think because you covered so many things, I think one thing I will say is I think that we have to start younger. And I think that if we can engage people when they're younger, if we can engage kids, even if they can't necessarily be philanthropists when they're little, I think just the engagement and community service and civic engagement can be done pretty much everywhere. And in the countries we work in, we find that that's a really exciting space. And we see that, even when you do participate in a program, then you want to become a part of it later. And I think encouraging that, and even thinking about amplifying this concept of prizes to different contexts and levels, I think is really exciting. It doesn't always have to be $1 million, but how do we start acknowledging and recognizing, just basic, they're not even basic, right? Just like smaller, just acts of generosity, solidarity, and civic engagement, because I think that's just a way to go broader, and it's so important, I think, globally now to really acknowledge that too. It doesn't always have to be a big check. And actually, I think something that NEID does really well with the giving circles is philanthropy doesn't have to always be huge, right? If philanthropy can be in a collective, when 5 people come together in a giving circle and commit to an initiative around girls, around mental health, around anything, economic development, that's also a way to hold each other accountable in a really nice way. So I feel like both prizes and philanthropy, we want to democratize access to those. And that means also thinking about different sizes, levels, scopes, and contexts. In Latin America, I'm sure in Tanzania and other countries, it's intimidating to see what people give in the US, and you think you have to have this giant prize. But I think if you can also have smaller prizes and make a huge difference and catalyze a lot of change and transformation and enable leaders to do amazing things. So.
Thank you. I worked for a couple of years on the board of the Global Community Engagement and Resilience Fund, and I think the maximum grant they gave was $25,000 or $50,000, but it was meant to go to those organizations that aren't even perhaps legally constituted in their country, right? But they're working at the coalface of, in this case, of violent extremism to try to address the hot spots and get to them before it becomes too big a problem. And so I think that's one of the things we've heard is about the importance of the grassroots. And about philanthropy, I would just say one of the things that I've really been impressed with the past couple of years of association with Aurora is the depth of thought and altruism among many philanthropists, that they really care, they want to see their funds used for the betterment of mankind. And I think that's something, given the generosity of Americans more generally, is very encouraging to me, particularly in a time like this. I will talk about it perhaps later as well, but I'm reminded of I think it was called the American Committee for Relief of Armenia and Syria, which was originally established during World War I, 1915, in response to the Armenian genocide. That led to the creation of the Near East Foundation. But in the meantime, they raised something like, at the time, $120 million in aid, which today is over $2 billion, which is really reminiscent of the kinds of responses you see to situations in, say, Ukraine or earlier in Bosnia and other places. But it's so irregular because there didn't see the same kind of popular response in the US to Rwanda. Horror at it, but not the kind of mobilization of resources, say, from 100 years ago or more recently in Ukraine. The other thing that I found very heartening recently was to walk down the street here in New York and see one of the bus stops. They have those advertisements there, and I saw an ad for the old UNICEF box. So you were talking about the importance of getting people involved younger, and also sort of maybe crowdsourcing or just community-based. Those little orange boxes that the kids bring in Halloween, they ask for 5 cents or whatever when you're trick-or-treating. It's a way to get young people involved early on in that sense. There was also the March of Dimes here earlier in the United States, but the UNICEF is the one I think that kind of comes to mind easily on that. Anyway, I think with that we can draw an end to the panel discussion. I want to thank the 3 panelists, and please join me in applauding them.